Hi everybody, welcome back to another session of learning English with me. So today what are we going to do? Today we are going to have another reading lesson. So I have a really great book with me and today we are going to learn English with a story. So this is very important in order to develop our overall English skills, our speaking, our sentences, improving our English level. That's really important to read something. And today we are going to have a reading lesson, learn English with a story. So in today's lesson, I'm taking one of my favorite novels and one of the most famous English classics. You must have heard the name of Pride and Prejudice. Right, so today we'll be reading a few chapters from this particular novel and we will be covering the few language points as we read. So that is what we're going to do. We are going to read, review some words, some language points. I will explain to you as I will go, as I will read. So are you ready for the reading lesson? You will get the text on my left hand side, which is going to be your right hand side. Okay, so you'll get the text on your right hand side so that you can read along with me if you want. And I would suggest that please go and read as I read so that it is helpful for you and you're able to gain more knowledge out of the lesson. Are you ready to read my favorite novel with me? Okay. So let's begin. I'm gonna use this book because although this is really rustic, it's like the pages, they are so rustic, authentic, but I'm comfortable with the font size that's given in this particular book. The content is same. They are both Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. So when I was in my English honors, I bought this one. So it is made in such a way which is more comfortable for students. This one is the novel. I bought this when I was in grade 9. So yeah, this is the best thing, the feeling that I get while reading this, that's the best. But we are going to read this so that the font is comfortable for you all. That's why I'm choosing this one. Okay, everyone, be ready because we are starting to read and I'm gonna take chapter number 1. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. So these are the opening lines of this particular novel and these are the most famous lines. So whenever you hear this line, people instantly recognize that it's from Pride and Prejudice. And these lines, they set the whole theme of the novel. So if you are a literature student by chance who's watching my video, this particular lesson is going to be a cherry on the cake for you because you might take away some points to write in your examination because this is a novel that is always there in the course and it's going to help you a lot, believe me. Okay, let's move forward. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. So this particularly tells us about the era in which this novel is set. So this novel is set in Regency era that we call the Regency era, just before the Victorian era, the era of balls and social gathering. That's the Regency era. So we are going to learn some posh English, as you know. The way they use English, that's quite elegant. They use lots of formal words too, but something that is more socially acceptable. Like it's social English. I like to call it the social English. So let's move forward. These lines basically mean that a man who has good fortune, like who has lots of money, land, must be in want of a wife. So that's what used to happen in that era. So women were not allowed to work and marriage was the hot topic always in the society. Okay, let's move forward. However, little known the feelings or views of such a man may be on his first entering a neighborhood. This truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he is considered as the rightful property of someone or other of their daughters. So entering a neighborhood. Neighborhood means a particular locality. Okay, the place they are living. So a particular society, a particular locality. My dear Mr. Bennet, said his lady to him one day, have you heard that Netherfield Park is let at last? Mr. Bennet replied that he had not. But it is, returned she, for Mrs. Long has just been here and she told me all about it. Okay, his lady. So you can see, my dear Mr. Bennet said his lady. So his lady means his wife. So it's another way to say his wife. Netherfield Park is let at last. So let at last, that means is occupied at last. That is, it has been bought by somebody and someone has arrived to live there. Mr. Bennet made no answer. Do not you want to know who has taken it? Cried his wife impatiently. You want to tell me and I have no objection to hearing it. This was invitation enough. Why, my dear, you must know. Mrs. Long says that Netherfield is taken by a young man of large fortune from the north of England. That he came down on Monday in a chaise and four to see the place and was so much delighted with it that he agreed with Mr. Morris immediately that he is to take possession before Michaelmas, and some of his servants are to be in the house by the end of the next week. Okay, so a man of large fortune. Fortune means wealth. So this is, we are reading a bit of Old English. So fortune here means wealth. Somebody who possesses great amount of wealth. What is his name? Bingley. Is he married or single? Oh, single, my dear, to be sure. A single man of large fortune, 4,000 or 5,000 a year. What a fine thing for our girls. How so? How can it affect them? My dear Mr. Bennet, replied his wife, how can you be so tiresome? You must know that I am thinking of his marrying one of them. So tiresome. Tiresome is like... he's not even trying to think about what she's thinking and he is just letting the things go like that. He's not paying attention to what Mrs. Bennet is saying. So tiresome is like a kind of attitude like you don't care and all that. Is that his design in settling here? Design? Nonsense! How can you talk so? But it is very likely that he may fall in love with one of them, and therefore you must visit him as soon as he comes. I see no occasion for that. You and the girls may go, or you may send them by themselves, which perhaps will be still better. For as you are as handsome as any of them, Mr. Bingley might like you the best of the party. So, my dear, you flatter me. I certainly have had my share of beauty, but I do not pretend to be anything extraordinary now. When a woman has 5 grown-up daughters, she ought to give over thinking of her own beauty. So, flatter me. So, flatter is like when you're complimenting someone and they are feeling so flattered, like so happy about that compliment. So, she's saying that you flatter me. You're over complimenting me. And she ought to give. So, ought is like, it is like what you should do and should not do. So, ought is another word for, you can say, should. In such cases, a woman has not often much beauty to think of. But my dear, you must indeed go and see Mr. Bingley when he comes into the neighborhood. It is more than I engage for, I assure you. But consider your daughters. Only think what an establishment it would be for one of them. Sir William and Lady Lucas are determined to go, merely on that account, for in general, they visit no newcomers. Indeed, you must go, for it will be impossible for us to visit him if you do not. You are over scrupulous, surely. I dare say Mr. Bingley will be very glad to see you, and I will send a few lines by you to assure him of my hearty consent to his marrying whichever he chooses. Of the girls, too, I must throw in a good word for my little Lizzie. I desire you will do no such thing. Lizzie is not a bit better than the others, and I'm sure she is not half so handsome as Jane, nor half as good-humoured as Lydia, but you're always giving her the preference. So here's the mention of the name of Lizzie. Lizzie is, should I reveal at this point? Let's read and find out. But before moving forward, let's review some of the words. Okay, so let's start with this particular word, scrupulous. Scrupulous. So it's pronounced as scrupulous. Repeat after me, scrupulous. Now, scrupulous means to give attention to every detail, right? You are over scrupulous, surely. So this is something that Mr. Bennet is saying. So this is a whole conversation between Mr. Bennet and Mrs. Bennet. Okay, so they are the parents of these 5 daughters, basically parents of Elizabeth, who is the main character, the protagonist of our story. Protagonist is basically the main character, the central character around whom the whole story, the whole plot line revolves. Okay, so they are the parents and they're discussing about this particular family, especially the man with a great fortune who has arrived there. He's about to shift to the neighborhood and she's asking him to go visit so that they can throw a party or some kind of social event, and so that they can marry one of their daughters before anyone else snatch him up. So yeah, it was used to be like that. That's how they have shown us through the novels and everything, the writers, and it used to be like that at the time. So everyone want to snatch the man for their daughter. That's something that used to happen. Do you know, Jane Austen has actually quite pointed out about the high class society, that this is the only agenda in their life, and which is really not so focused agenda. So in a way, we find as readers, as critics, we find it a bit humorous, and we find like she's pointing towards the shortcomings of the society, that they're just engaged in these activities, although revolution will come later. And that's why I really like this novel, because in that particular era too, so this heroine is represented with a great mind, a great attitude, that we will find later in the novel. And if you want, you can like it. I like this novel just because of the main character, Elizabeth, the protagonist. Okay, so she's witty, she is full of humor, and she's very intelligent. And she's someone who's ready to reject anybody, because at the time, girls were not allowed to reject a proposal, but she will, in this novel, reject lots of proposal. And that's something very bold and powerful for a woman at that time in the Regency era. So that's why I really like this particular woman character, because I believe somehow this shows a particular kind of revolution in the society. Okay, let's move forward. Let's read the novel. Okay, good humored. So good humored here is humorous nature, like we all say. Good humored, who has good nature, a pleasant nature, not so serious. So that's good humored. And handsome here is used for a girl. I know you can see she's not half as handsome as Jane, right? So handsome was quite common word at the time to use for any girl, any woman, to say that she's beautiful. I know that this feels weird because handsome is used for a man, but at the time people used to say handsome. So that was common. Nowadays it's no longer in use for a woman. You don't use handsome for a woman. Okay, let's move forward with the lesson. They have none of them much to recommend them, replied he. They are all silly and ignorant like other girls, but Lizzie has something more of quickness than her sister. So quickness. Quickness is like she has a quickness. That means she has intelligence, more intelligence than the others. Mr. Bennet, how can you abuse your own children in such a way? You take delight in vexing me. You have no compassion on my poor nerves. Okay, now one of the most famous word, vexing, vex. So that is used a lot in British English, British language, and vex is a word like you are vexing me. That means you are troubling me. Okay, so you take so much delight in vexing me. So delight is pleasure, that you find it funny and happiness, some kind of happiness in vexing me. So don't vex me. That's an expression, don't vex me. Simply to say don't annoy me. So vex is like annoying somebody, okay, causing trouble or problem, like you're annoying, trying to annoying someone. So don't vex me, don't annoy me. You have no compassion on my poor nerves. So yeah, she is being over dramatic here. You have no compassion on my poor nerves. So she's like, oh my god, my poor nerves. That is, don't test my nerves. So it's like that she cannot tolerate this much annoyance that he is giving her, like he's doing all these things, saying all these things to annoy her. She's like, you have no compassion on my poor nerves, so I can't tolerate anymore. That's the basically key meaning of this whole phrase. You mistake me, my dear. I have a high respect for your nerves. They are my old friends. I have heard you mention them with consideration these 20 years at least. So he's being humorous here. Okay, you mistake, my dear. I have a high respect for your nerves. They are my old friends. So he is trying to bring some humor in the conversation. Ah, you do not know what I suffer. But I hope you will get over it and live to see many young men of 4,000 a year come into the neighborhood. It will be no use to us if 20 such would come, since you will not visit them. Depend upon it, my dear, that when there are 20, I will visit them all. Mr. Bennet was so odd a mixture of quick parts, sarcastic humor, reserve, and caprice that the experience of 23 years had been insufficient to make his wife understand his character. Her mind was less difficult to develop. She was a woman of mean understanding, little information, and uncertain temper. When she was discontented, she fancied herself nervous. The business of her life was to get her daughters married. Its solace was visiting and news. Okay, some of the words that are there in this last paragraph. Lots of words are there. Let me just cover them for you. Quick parts. So quick parts is like some intelligence with a particular wittiness. Okay, and mean understanding. Mean understanding is like someone who does not understand deep concepts, like she has only surface kind of understanding. She doesn't understand much complex concepts or things in life, just like lives on the surface of everything, that she just sees word as she want to see. That's the thing. She fancied herself nervous. So she fancied herself nervous is she believed herself to be nervous, or she considered herself to be nervous. Fancied here means to be considered as nervous. So this is the first chapter of the novel, and this, like, you can read this novel if you really want to improve your reading skills. Some words might be difficult for you, but it's a great read, I'd say. And if you like want to continue, if you want me to continue the chapter, if you want me to continue with the lessons, more chapters from this particular book, or you want me to read a famous chapter, maybe the dance sequence maybe, then do let me know about it and I'll make another lesson for you. So that's the lesson for today. That's it. I would suggest that you give a reading once again, and the words that we covered today, you can go back, check them, and yeah, that's it for the lesson today. That's it. It was a reading lesson for today with a bit of vocabulary. I don't want you to focus too much on vocabulary, like cramming everything inside. No, just focus on listening, whatever I'm explaining. It's more of a listening reading activity for you. Today's lesson is listening and reading based lesson. So the purpose is to read. Okay, everybody, that's it. That's the lesson. Please like the video, share it, and subscribe to my channel. Now I'm gonna see you next time. Till then, take care and bye.